I need the record to show that Young Thug gotta be one of the top 5 realest street rappers ever.
Yeah.
YSL shit, hey, killing 12 shit, hey, fuck up jail shit.
Donovan Thomas Jr. was shot and killed in 2015. Several defendants in the YSL trial with rapper Young Thug are charged in connection to his death.
I used to pay this nigga to goddamn stay out of the streets.
For sure going to hell because he's a demon.
Young Thug is free.
In a packed courtroom, Young Thug, Atlanta's rap icon and one of hip-hop's biggest stars, sat stone-faced, cameras flashing, the world watching. To his fans, he was a genius, an innovator who repped Atlanta like no one else. But to the prosecution, he was something much darker, a suspected mastermind, a leader accused of pulling strings from behind the scenes in Atlanta's underground. They didn't just see an artist. They saw a man they believed was at the heart of multiple violent crimes, a man they were determined to brand as a murderer. As the charges rang out, racketeering, organized crime, murder, the tension was thick. Young Thug, born Jeffrey Williams, faced accusations that painted him as a criminal kingpin, the alleged head of Young Stoner Life, or YSL. But YSL, to many, was more than a label. The prosecutors saw it as a gang, a street movement tied to more than 50 murders and countless violent acts that rocked the city. This is the story about how Young Thug allegedly got away with murder.
I want to be who I really am. I'm really Jeff. I'm not, lame or anything. I'm kind of cool. I'm a cool person. So Jeffrey, I feel like I used to hate that name so much.
Young Thug founded YSL in 2016, but his connection with Atlanta's underground was deeply rooted by then. Initially, YSL was a movement in Atlanta's music scene. It quickly gained followers and established a reputation that extended far beyond music. Prosecutors would eventually claim YSL was more than a label. It was a full-blown criminal organization with a record of violence stretching across the city. Young Thug and YSL have been linked to various violent incidents, with some specific killings highlighted by prosecutors.
Say a teenager and a man in his 20s were both shot in the leg. The third, 26-year-old Donovan Thomas, was critical.
Had a significant injury. We had at least multiple gunshots in the upper torso area. He was rushed to surgery.
Thomas died at the hospital.
Donovan Thomas Jr., known on the streets of Atlanta as Big Nut, wasn't just another name in the city's underground. He was known for his deep connections with Atlanta's young talent, many of whom saw him as a mentor, protector, and ally. Some say he had a hand in shaping the futures of several up-and-coming rappers who would later become some of the city's biggest names. His respect ran deep, and that made him a potential threat to rivals who wanted control. For YSL, though, he wasn't an ally. Big Nut stood as a threat to their reach, a force that couldn't be ignored. So when Thomas was hit in a drive-by outside a barbershop in Southwest Atlanta in 2015, it wasn't seen as random. The message was clear. YSL was out to dominate, and those who got in the way would pay the price. Details emerged that the car used in the hit was reportedly rented by Young Thug himself, a detail that didn't go unnoticed. The streets talked, and the story spread. This wasn't just business. It was personal, calculated, and cold. Big Nut's murder wasn't just the end of one man. It triggered a ripple effect across Atlanta. Rival crews took it as a declaration of war, and tensions turned into gunfire, with bodies stacking up in a cycle of retaliation that's still echoing through the city. Young Thug and YSL's influence only grew after that night. Some saw Thug as untouchable, the figure who'd go to any length to defend his position. And with Big Nut gone, YSL became a name that carried fear and respect. Every clash, every feud that followed, Big Nut's death was the spark that fueled it all, leaving a trail that led back to YSL and the man at its heart, Jeffrey Williams. Over the next few years, killings tied to this beef stretched across the city. From home invasions to brutal street executions, the line between YSL's street power and the music industry began to blur. Every incident was a part of a growing chain, and while each killing seemed isolated, those in the know saw it all led back to one place: the war ignited by Big Nut's murder and fueled by YSL. As more close allies of Thomas were hit, it became clear this was no small-scale beef. One after another, Thomas's known associates started falling. YSL affiliates were rumored to be behind several of these deaths, moving through the city with a mission to wipe out any lingering threats. Bodies turned up in cars, on the street, even in clubs. Some hits were even captured on camera, fueling the legend of YSL's reach and instilling fear across rival crews. YSL members carried themselves with an untouchable energy, spreading rumors that the system couldn't touch them. As bodies dropped, YSL's influence only grew, with each killing solidifying their hold over Atlanta's hip-hop landscape and beyond. To the streets, YSL wasn't just a label. It was a movement that claimed territory, eliminated threats, and answered any disrespect with fire.
George, this investigation has been going on for months, and take a look at this. This is that 88-page indictment, 56 charges ranging from murder.
I 100% do believe that he's going to be found guilty. They're throwing everything in the kitchen sink. The judge don't want to, so much taxpayer money has gone into it. They don't want to do a mistrial at this point. I think it's going to be guilty, but I think it's going to be overturned on appeal. And I think once it's overturned on appeal, absolutely not. They will not try it again. And,
Or they'll just have him plead to something lesser, time served.
Which I think they would have done already, but there's so much egg on their face, they can't do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can't go from saying this guy's the most dangerous guy who's responsible for all these murders to now saying, hey, bro, we're going to let you out on time served, right?
To everyone's surprise, the saga of Young Thug took a sharp turn when his sentence, expected to be lengthy and severe, ended up shockingly short. After intense anticipation from fans, rivals, and the entire industry, the courtroom echoed with an outcome few could have predicted: time served. Young Thug emerged from the storm not as a convict weighed down by years, but as a free man, an outcome that left Atlanta, the hip-hop world, and beyond both shocked and mesmerized. This is how he made it happen. When Young Thug was charged, his legal team took immediate action. They used a sophisticated defense strategy that attacked both the character of the prosecution's evidence and the implications of gang association. They centered their argument on differentiating YSL as a music label, not a criminal organization. Thug's attorneys claimed that his lyrics and branding were expressions of his artistry, not coded language for violence or gang activity. At the same time, his defense attorneys exploited the weak points in the prosecution's case. Brian Steele, Thug's lead attorney, relentlessly emphasized the absence of any hard evidence linking Thug to actual violent acts. The RICO Act allowed the prosecution to argue that by association, Thug was complicit in YSL's alleged crimes. Steele countered by framing Thug's association with YSL as professional, not criminal. This distinction became a linchpin in his defense. Steele painted Thug as a target of bias, an artist facing unfounded charges due to his choice of lyrics, race, and associations. They argued that if Thug were prosecuted for merely being associated with people who committed crimes, it would be an unjust attack on an artist, not justice.
That I believe in, which is using RICO. The reason that I believe in it as a tool is it allows juries and the communities to see the complete picture of a crime so they can truly be educated and have facts to weigh when they're making decisions. And so
the RICO Act, or Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, was designed to dismantle crime syndicates like the mafia. However, in recent years, its use against hip-hop artists and groups has sparked controversy. For the first time, a tool used to dismantle organized crime was being applied to a music label, raising new questions about freedom of expression in the hip-hop industry. The DA argued that YSL operated as a gang, which made any support Thug provided to YSL equivalent to supporting criminal activities. The prosecution leaned on this angle heavily, using song lyrics, social media posts, and even clothing as evidence to paint a picture of a violent organization, with Thug as its leader. However, Steele argued that using lyrics and performance material as evidence of criminal intent was unjust and targeted. Where does artistic expression end and criminal implication begin? This question became central, drawing attention not just to Young Thug's case, but to the ethics of using lyrics in courtrooms as a whole. The issue garnered national attention, with many arguing it set a dangerous precedent for criminalizing black art. The strength of Young Thug's defense lay in systematically emphasizing the lack of direct evidence. With no video, fingerprints, or hard digital links to the murders, the prosecution's case relied on inference. This was where Thug's legal team struck the hardest, dismissing the prosecution's narrative as a collection of unproven assumptions. The strategy was clear: create reasonable doubt, dismantle the chain of circumstantial connections, and shift focus away from Thug's alleged role. The prosecution may have possessed ample circumstantial evidence, but without a smoking gun, convicting him of murder was out of reach. As a result, Thug escaped the most damning of charges, walking away from murder accusations that could have put him behind bars for life. Outside the courtroom, young Thug's image and influence played a powerful role in shaping public opinion. As a music icon, his popularity humanized him to fans who couldn't believe he was capable of orchestrating murder. Artists and supporters rallied around him, framing the legal case as an attack on black art and free expression. This wave of public support likely influenced perceptions inside the courtroom. As Thug's defense team argued that he was being unfairly targeted for his artistry, his public image lent credibility to their narrative. By framing the prosecution's case as an assault on hip-hop, they stirred up sympathy for Thug and deflected attention from the violent allegations. Thug's image and public backing were as potent a part of his defense as any legal argument, and they made it difficult for the prosecution to sway a sympathetic jury or a highly engaged public. Young Thug's ability to evade a murder conviction wasn't because of a definitive alibi or lack of a possible motive. It was the effectiveness of his legal team to cast doubt, emphasize gaps in evidence, and argue for artistic freedom that ultimately shielded him from the full force of the law. For fans, this outcome seemed like justice. But for those affected by the violence allegedly associated with YSL, it was a bitter disappointment.
Let's keep fighting. You know what I'm saying? Let's make them continue to embarrass themselves. But at the same token, my son is I've never tried to interfere with his decisions. I just try to give him the knowledge of making the best decision that he sees fit for him.
I feel like here that he's not allowed to be in Metro.
I'm totally against that because this is where he's from. And to have a district attorney take that away from him.
Now that young Thug is barred from living in Atlanta, his future is set to be one of reinvention and relocation. The city he helped shape and dominate in music and influence is off limits, pushing him to find new ground, both literally and artistically. Thug will likely focus on rebuilding his brand, perhaps moving to Los Angeles or Miami, where he can tap into fresh creative energy, expand his network, and stay connected to the industry without the constraints of Atlanta's past.